right, Brent Porcio here at TopVelocity.net. We got Dr. Ryan Crotin with armcare.com and Jordan Osagerura.
Hey, we got it right.
Still getting there. And with armcare.com. And we're going to cover the top 6 performance assessments for pitching. Pitching could be for velocity, could be for anything as far as when it comes to pitching performance. So I guess Jordan will start us off with one of his favorite assessments.
So obviously being with Armcare, my favorite assessment is the Armcare assessment, where we're looking at range of motion and strength. And what we're doing with that is we're obviously getting into a half kneeling position. We're going to pretend there's a wall there, and we're looking at internal rotation, external rotation, and then flexion of the shoulder, make sure that we have the length. And then to couple with the length, we want to make sure that we have the strength. So we're looking at internal rotation strength, external, something called scaption, and then we do a pinch grip to really isolate the FDS. Flexor digitorum superficialis. There you go.
Got it, man.
So we like to go over all that information, and then from that, we're able to dial in what that arm care is going to need to balance that shoulder out and to build strength. And then that's just part of that assessment. I'll talk a little more on that later, but you want to jump into your next ones that you like?
Yeah, I mean, we get hammer, obviously, on the armcare.com platform. I mean, we also have the primer, half kneeling test, full strength through your arm, front and back. It's a minute. And that tells you where you're at on the day. It preps you for your test. There's so much there for the upper body. But I'm going to spin a little bit in a different direction and talk about the lower body. One of the things I like looking at, and it's something that we do, I'm part of the faculty at Louisiana Tech, is that we look at something called the Bilateral Index. And whenever I do assessments, I want to understand where's the training element that's going to follow. How are we going to improve these measures, right? Process-driven results. And what I do first is I want to capture the athlete in their most motivated position. I see a lot of testing that has hands on hips, right? And that, from a technical standpoint, maybe you have less variables using the upper body, but for the athlete, they're highly motivated to jump as high as possible and use your full arms, right? So basically, it's a full arm vertical jump that I collect first. And then what we do using force plates, which you can use something called the Sayers power formula and find it online. You can put in the jump height and the weight of the athlete to develop power. But from a force plate, you can get very accurate 2-foot vertical jump power, okay? And now I decompose that with my athletes and I look at what is the single leg vertical jump power from a force plate, doing individual legs, okay? And understanding, here's my stride leg, here's my drive leg. I can look at how asymmetrical they are. Generally, pitchers are gonna have really high stride leg power compared to their drive leg. That's something we've seen in our research. And that allows you to know, okay, maybe this athlete needs a little bit more right leg work. When you look at TopVelocity as training program, you watch Brent, he's like an expert on drive leg force production. That's something that really kind of decomposes what the legs are doing individually. But the cool thing is when I got the power with 2 legs and have each individual leg, I add the 2 legs independently on the bottom. That's the denominator, okay? So that's the total power when I add this leg and this leg together. And then the higher number, okay, that we're dividing underneath is the bilateral power. And I'm trying to understand, is the ratio highly positive? Okay, so if it's over 1.0, that means my 2-legged power is greater than the independent addition of my single leg. And what it clues me in is telling me this athlete needs more unilateral power training, more single leg plyometrics, more single leg strength work. And that's important to kind of round out those asymmetries and so those power imbalances. Most pitchers generally that have higher throwing velocities, they actually are 25% more power produced independently when you add the legs together. They're more unilateral bias, okay? That's something that you want to look at. And then the other thing too is you can't throw the baby without the bathwater, because some of these guys are going to go to the MLB combine. So doing combine prep is something I do with my athletes. You also have to look for those ones that are really underperforming bilaterally. Those are athletes that might need more isometric positions from the bottom of the squat. They might need more loaded jumps, those kinds of things. They might need assisted jumps that you have to produce, better power from 2 feet, okay? Because they're going to be tested that way.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That was really cool. I mean, I would add to that, we use artificial intelligence and we give it a bunch of variables and it comes up with things per athlete that is what they need the most of, is where they probably have a big deficiency and they would make the most gains from it. And I see this come up a lot. It's a Y balance, a lower body Y balance test. So basically all you do is you're just testing 3 movements with each leg. So you're testing first a reach with, say, your left leg out and forward, then a reach back to that leg side, and then across. And you're doing that with each one, right, out and across. And what we do, you can simply just take a ruler or like a tape measure, lay it down, put your foot down, and what you're doing is you're not putting the leg that's reaching on the ground. It's got a tap. It can't put its weight down. So it's really where you can reach and touch forward, back, and back. And if that's something that typically, if you're doing it in inches, that isn't like 40 inches plus in all directions, then you're probably dealing with some pelvic stability. You know, there is a lot of knee and joint strength, ankle strength, joint strength going forward, but a lot of it is pelvic stability too. So it comes up a lot, and I believe it just shows that, and there's studies that link to it, that those who have they have higher measurements on these reaches they're better using the kinetic chain. So to me, that's really showing you how well do you know, when a coach says, do you use your low half, that's going to assess how well you're capable of using it if you really have a good reach from both legs.
Yeah, so for me, the second thing I like to look at from an evaluative standpoint is if the data is available, I want to know how their kinematic sequence looks specifically between pelvis and torso. I want to see a really good separation in terms of what they're creating for hip and shoulder separation. And then I also want to see on that kinematic sequence graph where the pelvis is coming up, I want to see the torso intersect it. That would be good timing between those two things. And if it's off, I'm going to bet more often than not that player is probably not going to be a high strike thrower, and he's probably got a little less opportunity to stay healthy if he doesn't have all the arm strength data that comes along with it. So when in doubt, my number one is going to be, what is that arm doing? How's that arm put together? Number two is going to be, how's that body moving specifically between pelvis and torso? Because that's going to give me a lot of performance information on how I can start projecting out their walk percentage, how many strikes I think they're going to throw, how much in the zone they're going to throw, and then along with all that information, if I can project out more velo.
Okay, another one, again, going to the jump. So I talked about, the vertically oriented jump. There are definitely elements on the lateral side of things, but I also look at frontal plane. When you look at pitching and you look at the lead leg, it's working to a position where it's trying to create what's called a shear force. It's landing forward to push back. And if you look at the vector of force, if you look at this on 3D, that arrow, when the foot hits, the ground reaction force is going back into behind the pitcher, okay? So the anterior, which is forward and backward, or the horizontal force going forward, is also important. One of the things that I like doing with my athletes, aside from broad jump testing, is doing a single leg half kneeling broad jump. One of the things, if you look in pitching, the stretch responses are really not that fast, okay? When an athlete loads, they store energy a long time, and you can tell there's a lot of co-contraction in the lower body because they can hold a knee position as they're moving, okay? There's not this fast action. It's good to understand the elasticity with a really fast action vertical jump, which is generally about 450 milliseconds when you go hands up and down and back up. But with this one, you're putting the athlete in a very, very low, mechanical advantage position. I'm bringing my center mass to the ground. I'm really stable. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a half kneeling broad jump. Okay, that's kind of cool doing it off a slope. But yeah, I'm looking at the same thing. I get their static broad jump. I look at their half kneeling on right and left, and I can also determine, how much of my horizontal driven force training do I need? A lot of the work that you see is very vertical. It might be hinge oriented, it might be squat oriented, but then you have to also create exercises that are more anterior posterior. So like hip thrusting actions, or some athletes, who don't have really good force production, or it's like too vertical, I might actually put them on the floor with dumbbells and have them improve their ability to create some of these shear forces, okay? So I'm able to determine, what are going to be the benefits to improving a static position and then creating power out of that position in this plane, forward and backward.
Yeah, I mean, that's great because it's also gives a more accurate assessment to the skill. because a lot of people do run and throws, and then they wonder why their run and throws velos are so much higher than their mound velos. It's because they don't move well from a static position as if from a running position. But to add to that would be, just because it comes up a lot too, a lot of the lateral broad jumps have real deficits, specifically in the young athletes I get. And I think it's because, like in a training environment, you rarely are loaded laterally. It's a hard way to load. It's almost impossible in the weight room to load in a lateral movement. The only way I've found to do it is obviously with bands or with a sled, especially with my sled, the front driving sled. So an assessment of that is just simply like an ice skater, right? So basically, you know, you're going to put your front foot, say, on the line. You're going to kind of reach back across your body with the other leg, like an ice skater, and throw yourself out like in a big jump. So, you know, here all the way out into a big jump as far as you can go in a lateral broad, and measuring right to left. I don't like to see it much more than a foot, or to definitely not 2 feet short of your linear broad. So do a linear broad. Don't let your laterals go much more than a foot short. I've actually seen, it's rare, I've seen guys jump farther laterally than linear, but that's very rare. It's normally a much farther linear jump than a lateral jump. So try to get somewhere close to a foot short of your linear on your broad, and with your laterals. That would be another great assessment. Cool, guys. I appreciate you watching. If you want more information on arm care, to go to armcare.com. If you want more information on TopVelocity, check out topvelocity.net. We're going to keep doing some more great videos for you. If you have any suggestions for some other ones you'd like to learn from us, put it down in the comments. Follow us, and we'll see you on the next video.